today will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. We have some late items to introduce, Ms. Gurry.
That's correct, Your Worship. We have an additional item to the procedural motion, Community Charter Reason 91E.
Very good. I would ask for a procedural motion to proceed in camera, moved by Councillor Thorpe, seconded by Councillor Bonner. All those in favour? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome all of you to the March 15th regular meeting of Council. I'd like to first recognize that we are gathered on the traditional territory of the Nanaimo First Nation. Our clerk tonight will be Ms. Sheila Gurry. And as I have repeated in what seems like forever, tonight's regular meeting of Council will be held in accordance with the Community Charter, Council Procedure Bylaw 2018, number 7272, and Ministerial Order number M192 governing open meetings during a state of emergency, and the Provincial Health Officer Order regarding gathering and events. Therefore, members of the public are required to observe meetings virtually and not attend in person, and question period will be suspended throughout the duration of the provincial health orders in effect. The first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items, and Ms. Gurry, we have a few tonight.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The first item is Agenda Item 12B. We're adding a report titled Situation Table Update. The second item is Agenda Item 15A, correspondence dated February 25th, 2021, to the Honourable John Horgan, Premier of British Columbia, from Wendy Clifford, Nanaimo Airport, Board Chair, Nanaimo Airport Commission, regarding Nanaimo Airport and COVID-19. And the third item is under Notice of Motion 14A. It will be, and it's from Councillor Gesselbrock, regarding the logging of old growth forest trees. And that's it, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. A motion for approval of the agenda is amended. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Martman. All those in favour? Any opposed? Motion carries. A motion for adoption of the minutes is circulated. Moved Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Bonner. All those in favour? None opposed. Motion carries. The Mayor's report. I want to start off on a really positive note tonight. It's been a tough year for people particularly involved with sports in our community. Sporting activities and events and all kinds of things have not occurred. But this is a letter that I'm going to read out from the Nanaimo Minor Hockey Association. It's not very long. Addressed to Mr. Harding, our General Manager of Parks and Recreation. Dear Richard, on behalf of Nanaimo MHA, I would want to express our sincere appreciation to Damon Johnson and staff in making our 2020 COVID season a success. These past months have been uncharted territory for organizations, our country, and our families. The course ahead is not quite clear yet, with guidelines and recommendations that change quickly. But what has been clear from the start is that both our association and the City of Nanaimo, specifically Damon and staff, and I include Lynn Work in this as well, have worked tirelessly to provide the players of NMHA a program we can all be proud of. We at Nanaimo MHA would like to thank Damon and staff for their patience, direction, and contribution during this eventful season. Every day, our volunteers and your employees put themselves at risk by opening up the arenas to the children of Nanaimo, work that is often overlooked in everyday life but is truly essential to our families. Sincerely, Brad Knight, President. I think it's nice to hear something about the hardworking people who do every day on behalf of this city do us proud. I also want to make reference to a statement issued by the BC Urban Mayors Caucus, of which I'm a member, and the UBCM on transportation and infrastructure. On behalf of the BC Urban Mayors Caucus, it's a thank you to Minister Fleming, who discussed key elements of the blueprint for BC's urban future that relate to moving people in our communities and sustainably and affordably. We were very happy to hear the minister's strong commitment to public transit and also his assertion that even highway and intersection projects would ensure these investments result in more transit-friendly outcomes, including a focus on active modes of transportation. A very positive statement, and I see the chair of the RDN nodding gratefully, of course, because transit remains a regional district function. Next, it's an invitation to those of you who have great ability in the poetic area. Nanaimo is inviting applications for its next Poet Laureate. They will be appointed by City Council for a 2-year term and will serve as literary ambassador to the city, charged with creating and presenting poetic works and engaging activities for the benefit of our community. Nanaimo's next Poet Laureate will have a track record of engagement with the literary community and will bring their own artistic objectives, experiences, and networks to this dynamic civic role. Over the course of their term, they will collaborate with city staff and with other community partners, producing and sharing work with diverse audiences. Poets are invited to review the complete guidelines, including eligibility requirements and details on how to apply on the city's website at www.nanaimo.ca/go-to/poetry, and the deadline to submit applications is April 30th, 2021 by midnight. As has become well known in the community, I am very pleased to mention again that the Front Street is going to have a complete streets makeover. Starting this month, Front Street will begin its transformation to a modern street that will increase the comfort and safety for people who walk, bike, take transit, and drive along Nanaimo's downtown waterfront. Approved by Council in 2020, the project is a continuation of the City of Nanaimo's commitment to complete streets and will connect cyclists between Maffeo Sutton Park and the recently completed waterfront walkway at One Port Drive. I might tell you that of the estimated $1.4 million cost, the Government of Canada has contributed $605,000 to the project through the Federal Gas Tax Program, which is administered in British Columbia by the Union of BC Municipalities. What that means is that we are getting a first-rate modern project at less than 60% of the total cost. And I appreciate a number of people have raised great concerns as if we are putting $1.4 million into bike lanes only down Front Street. But I am asking the citizens of this community, a few of whom have expressed their consternation or disapproval, just wait until it's finished. I think that people will be very pleased with the appearance of this and its functionality. And I was even happy to report today to a critic that, in fact, as opposed to losing parking spaces for those who are still automobile-centric, in fact, it will increase the number of parking spaces along Front Street. Next, the Badge of Honor awarded to Nanaimo for its leadership in climate action. The City of Nanaimo is among 25 municipalities across Canada working together through an intensive pilot program focusing on local climate action. Led by the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy, Canada, these municipalities have been working together to review and share best practices to lower greenhouse gas emissions and prepare for a changing climate. As part of a key milestone, Nanaimo has been awarded the Adaptation Badge for its climate resilience strategy, which has met the requirements set by GCOM on climate change adaptation and integrated climate action planning. So I want to say thank you to all of staff who were involved in this, and it's delightful to be recognized for showing leadership in this area. And finally, as we heard at the Finance and Audit meeting, the State of the Economy report is out, a snapshot of Nanaimo's future-ready economy. This is the second expanded edition, and while the impact of the pandemic has obviously been felt by everybody, it has been, to say the least, uneven across different sectors of the economy. But what those statistics show is that Nanaimo is performing well in most economic indicators. We are a much more diverse city economically. Although I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge the incredible pain that has been felt, particularly by the hospitality industry, those who work in it, those who have tried to make a living at it, and those who are going to suffer for a while longer, including, quite candidly, the very facility where we are coming to you from tonight, which is the Shaw Auditorium in the Bancroft Conference Centre. But there's lots to look forward to. There's a conference hotel going up beside us as we speak. Things will get better, and I am looking forward with some anticipation, as are most of you, to an improved year, particularly once the vaccinations start to roll out. And although things will never be normal the way we knew them, I think we have a lot to be grateful for in this town. So thank you very much. In terms of rising and reporting, I don't believe, Ms. Gurry, we have anything to rise and report from the in-camera meeting. We have no presentations tonight. The committee minutes are just to be received, and next is a motion for adoption of consent items. Moved, Councillor Bonner.
I'd like to pull.
Yep, thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Could I please pull out 10C as I want to change the motion?
Okay,
for the
10C.
request report.
Anything else to be pulled out? All right, we can vote then on 10A and B once I have a seconder. Seconded, Councillor Thorpe. All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Turley is opposed. Now on to 10C and Councillor
Yes,
Armstrong.
Your Worship. First of all, I want to apologize to the committee as well as to legislative staff, as I should have listened. I thought we could automatically ban conversion therapy, but I do believe I would like to change the motion that council directs staff to prepare a report outlining options to ban conversion therapy within the city of Nanaimo.
Seconded, Councillor Martman. Any discussion? Councillor Bonner.
Whatever we do to get the ban, I'm fine with this. My question here isn't so much on that, and I'm totally in favor of it, is, are we able to change a motion of a committee? Like, then does it become our motion, so it's a brand new motion? That's my understanding? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, Your Worship, through you to Councillor Bonner, that's correct. So the committee is recommending to council. Council is amending that motion, so they're not moving, seconding, and adopting that motion that the committee made. Councillor Armstrong is amending it here as a member of council.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Martman.
And to the best of my knowledge, Councillor Armstrong, but I think we actually did have the opportunity to let them know that the more appropriate place would be to have staff look into this. As much as I'm in favor of let's just ban this, we must go through the proper process.
Yeah, that's why I apologize to both. Staff did recommend that, but I just wanted to go ahead, thinking we could.
My rough and ready legal opinion is that we may not be able to do it, but I think it's important that this community make a statement that conversion therapy is not something that's appreciated by members of this council. All those in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. We have no delegations unrelated to agenda items. We do have a number of reports tonight, though. And the first is the Memorandum of Understanding between Island Health and BC Housing and the Navigation Centre. And Mr. Corson, standing in for Mr. Lindsay tonight.
Thanks, Your Worship. So this staff report is a follow-up to the September 2020 announcement from the province about a navigation centre that would be located in Nanaimo. This is a pilot project along with another one in Vancouver. And this facility would have up to 60 beds for the city's vulnerable population. And council is concerned about the need for wraparound services and for not to just be a housing facility. So on February 1st, staff were directed to reach out to BC Housing and Island Health to see how their memorandum of understanding, get a status update on that, to see how the two entities are going to work together to ensure that this facility is successful. At the time of writing the report, staff had reached out to both BC Housing and Island Health, and we were notified that work is still ongoing.
Thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just through you to staff, I would like to know when this MOU is drafted, that a definition of integrated clinical health supports is outlined as to what that is, because what it may mean to me, it may mean something totally different to somebody else. Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, following on Councillor Armstrong's comment to staff, Mr. Corson, I know you're working hard dealing with BC Housing and Island Health. I just want to follow up on your comment regarding definition of wraparound services, because I know those on council, and I'm sure members of the community at large, will be very interested in having an exact definition of what those services will look like, how extensive they'll be, what will be on offer. And I know that's something you are working to try and clarify, but I would just encourage you to make sure that stays top of mind as discussions progress. Thank you.
Anything further? Mr. Corson, thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Worship.
You're off easy tonight.
I'll be back.
I noticed that. Don't go far. The next is situation table update. And welcome to Superintendent Fletcher. Or acting superintendent, I suppose, if I was technically correct, but you're the only superintendent we got right now.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Welcome.
So I was asked to provide a a report on the situation table, and we started down this process in September of 2020 with the presentation and support through local MLA Sheila Malcolmson. And as you recall, we were here at that time. Together, the city and Nanaimo provided letters of support, and we went through the process of putting forward an application and working with community partners and receiving support from them. The timeline was tight in January, but we were able to get a significant number of community partners to put forward letters. And last week it was announced that Nanaimo was one of the successful recipients of the grant of $30,000 towards coordinated access and situation tables. At this point, the next step will be to do training with all of the community partners, and that will be facilitated through the grant. And we will be putting forward the integrated access to the various community partners that we have. Sorry, I don't know if that makes sense. Any questions?
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, through you to Inspector Fletcher. When I was going through the grant application, I noticed all the key partners. I noticed there was no First Nations groups mentioned. Could you comment on that, please?
Yes, they were consulted. However, there was a challenge in getting the letter forward at the time to include it in the grant, but they are a part of it. There have already been ongoing coordinated access meetings and restorative justice meetings with various First Nations groups. And this process really is going to augment what we're already doing in the community and take it to a much more formalized process. Same with our restorative justice actions that we take through the John Howard Society and different exercises that our youth unit do with the school district of 68. They all are following along similar principles, but the situation table increases the effectiveness and structure to it, and it brings in provincial partner agencies that are above and beyond what we're already doing.
Thank you.
Councillor Marvin.
Thank you. Through you, I'm just wondering, I know process is slow, et cetera, but it says it'll take several months for the official situation table. Can you help me understand that?
Yeah, and I too kind of got caught on that, hoping we could move forward. Part of the process is there is a contract training agency that is provided through this grant, and we are lined up for the next available opportunity, but there are there are communities that are ahead of us on that list.
Okay.
But that hasn't stopped us doing already reaching out and building those connections. Constable Waltman has been participating as an observer on the Surrey situation table to increase his familiarization with the process there. And we've been building bonds and ties with other community agencies in anticipation of the more formal process.
I just want to say thank you, because I think this is really needed in our community, and this is a very positive step forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your words, Councillor Martman. Seeing no one else, thank you very much. Much
Thank you.
appreciated tonight. The next is the Mid-Island Region Child Care Action Plan. Mr. Corson, welcome back to the hot seat. And I'm going to take a wild guess that Ms. Bopal Singh might have a few words for us tonight. No, that was the previous item.
So thank you, Worship. The report before you is a copy of the Mid-Island Region Child Care Action Plan. And this was a collaboration done with our partners within the Regional District of Nanaimo, the District of Lanceville, City of Parksville, Qualicum Beach, and of course the Regional District itself. I understand that this report was presented to you at the board meeting last week, and I believe you had opportunities to ask the consultants questions there, which is great. But we're also, Ms. Bopal Singh and I are also here to answer any questions you might have that are specific to Nanaimo. The recommendations we have for you are to just to receive the report at this moment, to endorse the targets for the number of spaces of childcare in Nanaimo, and then, as we've asked in many of these strategic plans, is to make sure this is included as part of our Reimagine Nanaimo process. So any questions you have, we're very happy to answer. Thank you.
Councillor Turley, Bonner, and Gesselbrock in that order.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to staff. Option 1 refers to endorse the child care space targets for the city of Nanaimo included in the report. And my question is, are these targets adjustable?
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Turley, yes, they are. They will adjust over time as we get into the process and understand if they're realistic or if maybe we could do even better. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. I would hope they would go up, honestly. My question here is, we recently had a really good conversation on community amenity contributions and the work that's being done on that. I'm wondering if, after tonight, that when we start to talk about our density bonusing, which I understand is coming later in the year, that we look to see how we look to that. I know we're going to be including in the Reimagine process, that's a recommendation, and I'm fully in support of that. I just thought that conversation is going to come to us quicker than the Reimagine work is going to come to us. So I would like to see if there's some way we can include that in our density bonusing conversation.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Bonner, certainly that's something we can look at. And in some communities, that's a common amenity that gets included. And again, that goes back to the value of the lift in the property and whether the lift is substantial enough to carry that amenity being brought forward.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Gesselbrock.
I was just hoping to move the recommendations.
Certainly, we've got a couple more on the list, but if, and seconded by Councillor Martman. Do you wish to speak to it?
I think this came across the regional district as well, and I think that childcare is proven to be critical for better health outcomes, educational outcomes, and gender equity. And I think that this report was excellent collaboration and in-depth look at sort of what the needs are, and it's clear that we do need to set ambitious targets to get the sufficient amount of healthcare available for the community. I know it's a big pressure on a lot of people, especially during COVID. It's had a big impact. So I think that I'd really like to see us move forward in the planning on this and definitely endorse the targets. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong.
No, I will not be supporting recommendation 1 for the simple fact we don't know the financial obligations. They said anything in red has a financial obligation to it, and there's 17 in red. And it could be anywhere from $400,000 to $500,000 of taxpayers' dollars, and I'm not prepared to do that at this time without knowing the numbers. I would endorse number 2, which is to receive the report and include the action plan into Reimagine Nanaimo, but I'm not prepared to do this without knowing the exact financial impacts, and I believe they're going to be quite large. So, and I also don't know what our staff capacity is to also do that. So I would look to, I don't know who could answer that question, but what is the staff capacity to deal with that plan? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thorpe. Oh, do you want to answer now?
Okay. Through the chair to Councillor Armstrong, the way the motion is written is for council to endorse the space targets, but not all of the recommendations in the chart. What we identified in attachment B for you is so that you would be clear going forward, should you give us that direction. But at this time, the report as it stands with option 1 is to endorse the space targets and receive the rest of the information in the report for Reimagine Nanaimo. But because we wanted to show you what the implications were, should you at a later date wish us to consider them, for example, like Councillor Bonner's comment, we just laid those out for you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, if I may, I'm prepared to support the recommendation to receive the report, and I appreciate the work that went into the drafting of the action plan. But I do share Councillor Armstrong's concern over the financial aspect of this, and I expressed this at the regional district as well. Quite bluntly, I see this as the thin edge of provincial downloading. We'd all like to see, I'm sure, universal child minding, but somebody has to pay for it. And the report acknowledges, and I quote, while the provincial and federal governments have the primary roles to play in the policy and the funding of child care, local governments have certain jurisdictions and things that they can do. And sorry, that's the end quote. And then in attachment B, under the recommendations, my addition was slightly different than Councillor Armstrong's, but out of 40 recommendations, I counted 18 that had financial implications, and a number of those directly to the city. So, as I said, I'm prepared to accept the report, but I go into this with eyes wide open that down the road, we might have decisions that are going to be tough decisions, whether we want, in fact, to spend city money on something which is not a city jurisdiction. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. Councillor Marmon.
Thank you. I see it a little bit differently. I saw that the recommendations, although there's 17 recommendations for each local government, there's another 7 for the city of Nanaimo. I think any financial implications will come back to us with the Finance and Audit Committee if we were going to make any decisions around that. But some of the simple things that we do have control of over the city is reducing application fees such as building permits, which will help slightly reduce childcare startup, or that fact that we charge $50 fee for childcare center licensing. So I think these are things that if we wish to explore over those things we do have jurisdiction of a city, we could always get a staff report and look at exactly what the financial implications would be. But I think all of us, all levels of government, have to look into child minding. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Martman. I well appreciate the cautious approach that's taken by Councillors Armstrong and Thorpe on this, and it's well known around this table that I have spoken out quite vigorously around the whole housing issue, that I have no wish to see this council take on housing as a responsibility. or anything else that falls strictly to provincial jurisdiction. But for me, the approach that we're being asked to take tonight is no different than it is with this council's approach around housing, and that is that we have a role to play. We do zone land. We do decide what happens on it. And I see our role in endorsing this tonight as pretty much the same thing. We're not being asked to commit dollars tonight. We're simply being asked to recognize that childcare in a modern, functioning economy, democracy, however you want to phrase it, is absolutely essential for a healthy society. It fits within the donut model that has been the subject of so much discussion lately, but it also fits in with good old common sense. It speaks to feminism. It speaks to the values, I think, of many communities, and I look around this the table and being somewhat aware of how many of the children of people around this table enjoyed the benefit of good quality childcare and the impact it had on their children's lives. I think it's really important. So yes, we'll be cautious and we'll be sensible, but I think this is worthy of support. If I've inspired anybody else to say something, by all means speak up, but otherwise I'm going to call for the vote. All those in favor? And contrary? Councillor Armstrong. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Corson, Ms. Bhopal Singh. The next is item D, allocation of unallocated pedestrian funds, part 1. I love the thought of a sequel in this.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're happy to bring back the franchise shortly, we hope. So I'll briefly introduce the subject, and Ms. Thomas, who's the author of the report and is here to answer questions and present a few words as well. So Council's significant investment, up to $1 million in pedestrian unallocated funding this year is given a real opportunity to accomplish a number of important projects. And as Your Worship noted, we're two-stepping this process, as Mr. Rudolph likes to call it. So bringing the higher priority intersection safety upgrades, a proposed list for your consideration, and we'll follow it up, we believe, in May. We're targeting May for the part 2 clone of the sidewalks to come back to you. So as the report notes, the priority is really around the intersection, so that's why we're here in front of you tonight. And sprinkled throughout the report, there's references to some of the subjects that we'll be hoping to address on your GPC day, to address some of the questions and comments that we've heard around crosswalk safety. And so I'm just the design elements of a crosswalk, the prioritization, and bringing in the road safety team, ICBC, RCMP, thinking about Vision Zero and some of those concepts. In this project, we've recommended one sidewalk that's timely, it's Needham Street, and that is to connect up with some infrastructure work that's being done in partnership with Nanaimo First Nation, and that will, we'll be able to leverage their investment in the project and have the project built fairly quickly. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Thomas to add any words and prepare for any questions.
Ms. Thomas, welcome. Always nice to see you.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for having me here tonight. So this year we have $1 million to spend, and we're proposing to break it into 2 halves. Part 1, which is the same kind of projects we presented last year. We'll talk about sidewalks and crossings, which we think are the higher safety priority in terms of pedestrian services. And then part 2, we plan to bring to you in May, and that will focus on the more accessibility-related improvements. So tonight, in my report, I talk about 8 different crossings. This year, we have enough funds that we can look at the rectangular rapid flashing beacons, as well as curb modifications, and where needed, we will do lighting improvements for the crossings as well. One of the other things that we haven't done in the past and that we're happily looking forward to incorporating are raised crosswalks, so that it will also be part of the projects that we do this year at the crossings. And so each crossing is addressed a little bit differently in the report, and I'm happy to take questions if you have something specific about one of the 8 crossings. The Sidewalk Project, it is part of a sanitary sewer project. We're able to add the sidewalk on cost effectively, and it's a partnership with Nanaimo. Looking forward to the future, well, I should go back one step. We've already connected with our partners at ICBC about the cost sharing that the road improvement program can do with us. And they've looked at our recommended projects, and their very high level estimate is $85,000 in total for the contributions for the 9 projects we're suggesting. The 2 crossings that are next on our list to monitor are Dufferin Crescent at Grant Avenue, which you'll know is near the hospital and has significant pedestrian volumes. And the other is Albert Street at Selby, and we will look at that as part of the Albert Street bike route and determine whether or not it warrants flashing beacons as well. We're also looking at the possibility of incorporating 3-color half signals into our toolkit for pedestrian crossings. They're very expensive, $500,000 approximately per crossing, so we have to be careful about recommending them. And last but not least, we started last year reviewing all of our pedestrian-related evaluations and monitoring practices. And that work is still underway and will come out as part of Reimagine Nanaimo and the active transportation component of the OCP review. I think that's pretty much all I need to say tonight. I'm happy to take questions, Your Worship, if you have any.
Thank you very much, and we do. Councillor Turley and then Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Ms. Thomas. So I have to profess my ignorance here, but what is a rectangular rapid flashing beacon as opposed to a pedestrian-initiated button that turns a light on?
Through Your Worship to Councillor Turley, the rectangular rapid flashing beacon is what we currently use. The pedestrian pushes a button and the lights flash, and the rectangular rapid flashing beacon is just higher intensity LED light, and it flashes more quickly than the old-fashioned ones used to.
Okay, so it is pedestrian-initiated then?
Yep.
Perfect, thank you.
Yes.
Councillor Brown.
Your Worship, if you would permit me, I would love to move the motion.
Very good. Seconded, Councillor Hemmons.
Just the staff recommendation that council
Okay,
allocate 505.
The staff recommendation, Your Worship, and Council, is usually option number 1, so it's the recommendation at the top of the report.
Exactly, 505,000 to the pedestrian unallocated funds, yes. And I'm sorry, seconded, Councillor Hemmons, yes, all right.
I'd just love to give my thanks to staff for this report. It's great to see with the additional resources, these projects unfold on the community, so thank you.
Councillor Gesselbrock.
Just like to say I'm pleased to see these pedestrian safety improvements go ahead. A lot of great projects and things that we're seeing in there, and it's a pleasure to be able to see them go forward. So thanks, staff, for that report, and yeah, looking forward to it.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. I'm very much in support of this. I'm glad to see this is coming forward. I'm looking forward to parts 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I would hope that eventually there are so many parts of this franchise that make Star Wars look like a short story. But the one point that you mentioned, that you were concerned about the price of a crosswalk at $500,000 and concerned about bringing it forward. I would hope that you would bring it forward anyway, and I'll deal with the people that don't want to pay for it. Thanks.
I was going to say riding in on a white horse. Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to quickly say that I totally also am in complete support with this recommendation, and I'm very pleased to see that we're taking action on some pedestrian safety issues, which I really think we need to address. And it's also heartening to me to know that, and I think our viewers need to know that staff are well aware of the problem points in town, and they are on our radar. We can't fix everything all at once, but this is a great start. And in terms of the staff options, I noted that the option that is on the table right now is to improve 8 intersections and 1 sidewalk project. The other option would have been to do two sidewalk projects only, and to me, the intersections are the safety hazards, and I think your report indicates that. So this is great news. I'm glad it's going ahead, and like Councillor Bonner, we'll hope the sequel lives up to the original when we get part two. Thank you very much.
Councillor Hammonds.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to staff for this great report. I'm happy to support the staff's recommendation and get started on this work. I think there's a couple of things that stood out to me. The first is that we can really get some work done when we resource this, and I think that's a good lesson for us. And I know that puts pressure on staff, and I think we really appreciate the work that's gone into this. And the second piece is there's mention of bringing in a consultant to review the city's current evaluation and monitoring practices, and I think this is something we've talked about for a while, is having that matrix, so really glad to see that work is underway. Thank you.
Councillor Martman.
Thank you. I want to echo what everybody else has said. I think it's great that we're able to make these improvements for pedestrian and active transportation. Just out of curiosity, and perhaps this isn't on the top of your head, but that one block on Halliburton, 700 block, do we know approximately how much that might cost?
Ms. Thomas.
Through your worship to Councillor Martman, we have a cost estimate in the report. I believe it's
Oh, I didn't-
$554,000. It's under sidewalks, option, or item 4. And so, yes, we do have a cost estimate. $554,000.
It's a big number for.
We've got around 2 on this, right? Coming forward, because just a heads up, I'm definitely uncomfortable with leaving one block on a street without a sidewalk, and I'm really, Halliburton is such a well-used street that I'm really hopeful this might come forward very soon too. Thank you.
Through your worship, it is scheduled for 2025, so.
I'm hoping before that.
Councillor Armstrong.
I just have a question on the order on the Bruce Avenue one, between 1 and 5. I guess my concern is, you've shown that there's been 2 serious pedestrian MVAs, but there's also been a fatality there within the last 6 years. So why wouldn't we put that before an area that hasn't had any injuries or accidents? Why wouldn't that get precedence over the other 6th and Albert instead of Albion and 6th?
Your Worship, I think, well, Barb, you want to take a swing at that one, or maybe I'll just put a few words out there. One of the things, an accident at a crosswalk isn't necessarily an indicator of safety, and I know that sounds a little bit inaccurate, but it's true. I think when we look at the contributing factors to the accident, in the case of Bruce, the crosswalk meets the standards that when it was installed, it met the standard of the day, and it still meets the standards. Now, this report is proposing to improve it to heighten that standard, and I would say that's why the priority doesn't necessarily reflect what you may think as in terms of accidents bringing it forward, if that makes sense. Does that help?
No, it does to me. I understand. I just wanted to explain the rationale for those at home that are watching that may not understand it. Thank you.
I just want to express my thanks for this, and I'm sympathetic to Councillor Martman's comments, and I think Councillor Emmons has something to say as well about the extension from Woodhouse to Robbins on Halliburton, but it's a fairly long block, and $554,000 is a lot of money, but it's an opportunity for me to remind those who are listening tonight, and I think these occasions should be used as an educational opportunity. When the Regional District of Nanaimo had works to be completed on the south end of Halliburton, the city piggybacked on board, so to speak, and essentially created this gap, which wouldn't really have existed in the same way it does, and that's a result of good planning and the good work of our staff in ensuring that when we're digging up the streets, we get as much done as we reasonably can for the dollar and give the best delivery and service back to the taxpayer. So I'm not saying I'm opposed to moving it up in terms of priorities, but I think one of the most important things that we heard here tonight, and Councillor Hemmons has already pointed out, as of others, is the comments around the retention of a consultant to review the city standards evaluation monitoring practices. That speaks highly of staff to engage that kind of consultation in order to ensure that we are making the best decisions in accordance with the best knowledge and practice that's available. Because I am old enough, as is Councillor Turley and Thorpe, to remember the happy days of the great expansion of this province under social credit when blacktop was being put down all over this lovely province, often not with necessarily the best political decisions in terms of public policy, but the best political decisions in terms of re-election. And I think we always want to be conscious of the fact that in the 21st century, our staff are coming to us with recommendations based on the best practices without, I would suspect, any real consideration of the political consequences. So we have to always look, and I'm not suggesting we don't, or anyone's proposing that we don't, but we have to look at the facts, so to speak, in order to make our best decisions, not necessarily with the politics of it. And so having said that, I'm very pleased with what staff has done and very pleased with the recommendations tonight. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. Just a minor thing. I'm looking at the Labio Road and Shenton Road intersection, and I'm sure there's probably a reason for this, but the sidewalk is right at the corner. It's a continuation of the sidewalk. The crosswalk is right at the corner. Are cars coming down Shenton, because I hang in this area quite a bit, are cars coming down Shenton who are looking up, say, east on Labio to make sure cars are coming, going to see somebody walking across when their attention is the opposite direction? Will they be able to see the flashing lights that are proposed for there?
Through your worship to Councillor Bonner, are you referring to people driving already on Labio or the ones on Shenton and making a right turn?
Shenton making a right turn.
There is less, well, they will see some. The lights won't be directed at them because they have a stop sign. And so presumably a driver driving with being prudent would pull up to the stop sign and look for pedestrians before making their turn. I can't guarantee someone won't make a mistake. The lights are oriented for people traveling on Labio. There's typically with lights, there is some overflow to them, so they will be somewhat visible, but they won't be oriented towards Shenton.
Is it, I'm not sure if it's a part of the recommendations from the Canada Transport Organization to move the sidewalk a little bit down, like say west?
The crosswalk, you mean?
The crosswalk, yeah, that's what I meant, yeah.
We would look at all of that as part of the installation.
Okay. And to the point of drivers driving prudently, if they all did, we wouldn't need these things, but that's another topic.
A fair comment.
Yes.
One of those idiots just passed me this morning in the school zone where two of my grandchildren attend this morning, Councillor Bonner. Councillor Armstrong.
Just to follow up on what Councillor Bonner said, because I agree with his point, could you angle it a little bit so that the person making the right turn would actually see the flashing light? Because most pedestrian injuries do happen on a right turn.
Yeah. I think, Your Worship, that's a good point, and it's when you see the picture on page 258, you can see how that there's the potential there. So it'll be, as Ms. Thomas
And that, I
indicated,
think,
be
would
something we'll
address
look
the
at for
issue.
sure.
Thank you.
Councillor Turley.
So, thank you, Your Worship. Further to Councillor Bonner and Councillor Armstrong's comment, given their concerns, and I agree with them, would it not be more prudent to have the sidewalk or the crosswalk on the east side of Shenton Road, crossing Labio, as opposed to on the west side?
Through your worship to Councillor Turley, one of the challenges with moving the crosswalk then is it wouldn't match where the residential neighborhood is and where the kids and parents are walking to the school. So we can look at that. I'm not sure that would match the desire lines for the neighborhood. And going back to the question about the lights being visible on the side street, we have the option of adding additional flashing lights. So if we want to put them to face the side street, we can do that as well. So rather than twist them to be imperfect for everybody, it would be better to give lights for both directions, if that helps.
And this is why we have staff, Councillor Turley. All those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much, both of you. Appreciate this tonight. Councillor Hemmons?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a motion regarding the last report. I would like to move that Council allocate $554,000 of the Special Initiatives Reserve for sidewalks on Halliburton Street to be completed in 2022. And I will speak to it if I have a seconder.
Seconded, Councillor Martman.
So I'm really happy to approve the Needham sidewalk in the previous report. However, in terms of really advancing walkability and mobility in the south end, that 700 block of Halliburton is a really key piece. It's the missing link between the new amenities to the south that you described and the older sidewalk beginning at Robbins. Once built, we're going to have a complete pedestrian path the entire length of Halliburton, which is a primary feeder into downtown. Add to this significant and growing traffic on the road, the location of a well-used bus shelter at Halliburton and Robbins, and in recognition that residents who live downtown are more likely to travel by foot, I believe this is a worthy project to accelerate. Further, I believe if we wait for phase 2 to have this conversation, I think this project is an unlikely candidate because it would require the whole funding envelope, as well as it's already on the books for 2025. So my rationale at this point is that it's happening in 4 years, but we'd like to accelerate it. So that's my motion.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Worship. Through you to staff, with the Irwin and this potential motion, if it's supportive and or supported by council, I know the RDN has put in an application for a transit shelter on Halliburton. I believe it's closer to Irwin, but I'm not, my recollection here is a little foggy. Is that shelter proceeding, or does it have support of the city, and how would it benefit from discussions around potentially this type of infrastructure?
Through your worship to Councillor Brown, yes, we are aware of that wish, and we are working with the RDN on locating a shelter it's on Halliburton, right, at Needham? But on Halliburton, yes.
Okay, sorry, that didn't really answer my question. With the, so one, are we supporting that? I guess is working with and supporting are different, so I'm just curious on that. And my other question is, if this was to proceed on the 700 block of Halliburton or the works on Irwin, is there, does that shelter make sense where some of these improvements are going rather than where it's been identified?
I would have to take that question away and have a look at it a little bit more in context holistically of where the bus routes go and have discussions with Mr. Rose, who's not here tonight, and the RDN. So perhaps Mr. Sims has an answer for that? No, if we could take that question away, Your Worship, and find some information.
Sounds good. Yeah, I'll be super happy to vote in favor of this. I've heard from a lot of people in that particular area, especially during the campaign down on those streets, saying that that was a big priority for them. So I think it's great to get it done. I have one more question through to staff. If we were to do that design, the waterfront walkway plan speaks to future infrastructure on that whole section of road. Would we be accounting for that in the design, or would we put in a sidewalk and then have to revisit that location a few years when hopefully that waterfront walkway plan starts to get initiated?
Your Worship, I think we would look at it strategically, whether it makes sense to have the waterfront walkway on that particular side of the road or not. But I think it would be considered strategically. If we can kill two birds with one stone, of course, we would do that. And I'm not sure what the cost estimate that we have in here speaks to, whether it's purely a sidewalk or if it's the wider path.
Ms. Thomas?
Your Worship, I can add a little bit to that. The cost estimate in there is just the sidewalk from point A to B. There's no interconnection to any other areas. So I just looked at it in isolation.
Right, okay. But I just want to make sure that we'd be looking to the future to make sure that we're building a piece of infrastructure that could be incorporated into future design. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. I won't be supporting for the simple reason that there's other areas that have been asking for sidewalks for a lot longer that have none, where kids walk to school on the roads because there is no sidewalk, one being the Echo Bay, which was recommended as number 2 in here. Number 2, from my recollection, and staff, please correct me if I'm wrong, we have not invested in any sidewalk infrastructure north of, I think, Country Club, in I don't know how many years. And what brings to mind for me is Lost Lake Road, an area that is in desperate, desperate need of a sidewalk. We've had many, many accidents there, fatalities, children hit, bicyclists hit. If we're going to start changing the order, then for me, I would rather change the order to look at along Lost Lake Road, which has been here for years as well, and has never had any improvement or investment by the city. And I noted your comments, why Halliburton was put to number 5, because it goes into the acceleration of a planned project, which would have other stuff around it. So for me, I won't support it for those reasons. I do understand the rationale behind it, but I believe the rationale behind project number 2, which is departure-based school, where little kids walk to school, and their parents won't even let them walk to school because it's not safe. If we're looking at climate change and we're looking at your donut model again, that would make more sense to go to that route, because there is no option but to drive your kids to school. So if you want to get people out of the cars, you can walk on Halliburton a lot safer than you can walk up in that area, having walked both of them. So for those reasons, I won't support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Worship. I think all the sidewalks here, I'd really like to put them all in. This particular one on Halliburton, it's been identified need for a long time, and as an important piece of connectivity. It's been sort of a missing tooth and a beautiful smile. And I think with the development that's slated on Halliburton, this is a neighborhood that we can really enhance the walkability. So I'm in support. Thank you.
Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. So a couple of questions. I'm assuming it's just one side of Halliburton, not both sides, right? And do you have any idea of when the underground infrastructure will be in need of replacement there?
Your Worship, that's a good question. I'm not 100% on that one, whether, the sidewalk would be well off to the side and we wouldn't necessarily have underground infrastructure there. But I'm not sure. I believe the balance of the infrastructure is in reasonable shape, but I'm kind of going off memory more than...
It's okay. Your memory's probably better than mine.
Councillor Thorpe.
Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Through you, no, I'm sorry, I won't be able to support this motion, mainly on principle. As we talked earlier in this report, staff have gone to some trouble to put together priorities based on the evidence that they have collected in terms of where are the main trouble spots and what deserve to be fixed first. And again, as we said earlier, it'd be nice to do everything all at once, and I'm sure the residents of the Halliburton area are looking forward to having that piece of sidewalk completed. But so are the residents in Departure Bay South, close to Departure Bay Eco School. I think that's a very worthy candidate, which currently is at number 2. And the residents around between Wakasai and Howard, I'm sure, are looking forward to that improvement. So staff's job is to present us with an apolitical best advice on where the priorities should be and deserve to be, and that's what they've done. Yes, we can make a political decision to overturn that, but I don't think we should in this case, and I'm very uncomfortable with doing that. So Halliburton, yes, it's on our list, it's on our radar, it's going to get done within the next several years. Just as are others, but I see no good reason to bump it up at the expense of ones that have projects that have already been identified as being more worthy. So I will not support this. Thank you.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. I'm going to support this, probably for the opposite reasons Councillor Thorpe has just pointed out. It is in our plan to do it in 2025. We're bumping it ahead, but we're also funding it. So it's not taking money away from anything else, and I would invite other councillors to do the same thing that Councillor Hemmons just did, and I'd probably support them on that as well. I do actually have a question, if I may, to staff. If we're moving this up in 3 years in the plan, the the $500,000 we were going to spend in 2025, what happens to that money? Like, where does it go?
Don't have it yet.
Your worship, typically we would allocate a set amount for transportation improvements as a lump in each year. And so if this gets accelerated, if council decides to do that, then what that does is leave a, if I can use Councillor Gesselbrock's analogy, a gap in the beautiful smile. So now we would accelerate other projects or make adjustments for that particular year, if that makes sense.
But if we're funding it out of our strategic infrastructure reserve, does that not give you another extra $500,000 in 2025, which we can put in another sidewalk?
Thank you, you're right, yes.
Okay,
Yes,
I'll
that's
see
correct.
you then.
Yeah, got me. So much for the gap.
Pride goeth before the fall, Councillor Bonner. Councillor Marvin.
Thank you. And I understand, yes, we have lots of neighborhoods in this city that require improvements and safety for active transportation. My understanding from the motion was that this was for 2022's budget, so that phase 2 of this year, we will still proceed as we would look at for our decision-making. And I just feel that we will have sufficient funds to be able to cover this if we take it from the infrastructure reserve, correct? Something like that? So I'm actually in support of this. I recognize that we have other priorities too, but this isn't, we're just moving it from 2025 up to 2022's budget. Thank you.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. A note on the 2022, I actually initially intended to move it be completed this year, but recognizing what staff has on their plate, I don't think that's reasonable. And my rationale stands. We have work that's still going on in that southern section of Halliburton, and it really is that the gap. I don't believe any of the other projects have a single block section that has infrastructure on both sides, and we're currently still constructing some of that infrastructure, so it's in progress. And further to Councillor Thorpe's point about projects that are more worthy, I didn't read this report as 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 were ordered in order of priority. Did I misread that? Were they meant to be, this is priority number 1? Could I have staff answer, please?
Through your worship, to Councillor Hemmons, to be fair, the intersection upgrades are in order of priority, the sidewalk, not so much.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well, I must say that this one gives me a great deal of trouble, and for reasons that I stated somewhat before we entered into this discussion. Staff have made recommendations, but I've just heard Ms. Thomas say, and either her or Mr. Sims are welcome to correct me, that when we're talking about the sidewalk infrastructure, it's not necessarily or indeed is in order of priority per se, apart from, I assume, per Needham, because it's a add-on project to a proposed project. Is that fair comment? And if you could please comment.
Your Worship, I think you've got it. I think the purpose of the pedestrian unallocated fund, in a sense, was to allow council to work on projects that it saw that weren't part of our regular stream of capital projects. So that may speak a little bit to the priority. I think in support of some of the pedestrian safety concerns that you've heard loud and clear from the community, that was really the impetus for driving the recommended intersection upgrades. When it comes to the sidewalks, I think the report notes that pedestrian throughways are less likely to see conflicts with cars, of course, and so that it's not as high a priority in the safety. Maybe I'll leave it at that.
Thank you. I could probably spend 15 or 20 minutes arguing with myself coming to a decision tonight, because it's important. And I come back to the points made by Councillor Thorpe very eloquently around staff recommendations. And it's no secret that I have said before that by and large I'm going to follow what staff recommends because they're paid professionals, I'm a politician, and what they have to say is based on best practices. Having said that, Ms. Thomas is, I'm not foisting the, how shall I say, reason on her tonight, and Mr. Sims, but they have given me a bit of an out because I read this to basically be that Needham was the priority for obvious reasons, and I do strongly support that Needham continue because it represents that kind of best practice where you piggyback on digging up the street once as opposed to doing it twice and thereby earning the ire of the voters who think we're a bunch of idiots because we do that. Having said that, I'm well aware of the concerns raised by parents around Departure Bay School, 6th Street, part of a longer-term project. These are all important. But having said that, and having promised not to argue myself to death, I'm going to support this tonight. I have some reservations with respect about making this decision based on a motion brought up at first instance. I'm still of the cuff school, first heard deferred, but I don't sense great desire tonight for this council to ask for a further report or for staff to reconsider in terms of priorities. Mr. Sims?
Worship, just perhaps Mr. Rudolph and I were just conferring and thinking about that question that was left hanging around underground infrastructure that Councillor Turley asked. And it just might be prudent not to surprise council with a required infrastructure upgrade for underground. So it's just putting it out there to allow staff to go back and confirm that the infrastructure is in reasonable shape and could support the improvement to this particular block of Halliburton without, and maybe refine the cost a little bit better. Look at the issue around the waterfront walkway as well.
This is the kind of courageous position from staff that I expect. And in light of that, Councillor Brown, did you want to make a motion or you want to speak further? Sorry? No. All right, then I'm going to move that we defer this decision until we have a further report from staff in order to make the decision based on all the best information available. And seconded, Councillor Armstrong. Any discussion on that motion? Councillor Brown. Sorry, give me a, there we go.
Yes, I won't be supporting the deferral because I would hope if it made it onto this list that due diligence was done. If it wasn't, then I actually have concerns about this entire list and would propose the whole thing get deferred. But also, I've had some numerous conversations about different things on the street with staff, more in particular around the walkway and when that work could be done. And there is, my understanding from those discussions was that there is nothing firm for when that work will actually be done. And I had asked some similar questions around infrastructure and they were not raised at the time. So seeing it on the list based on some of those past discussions, I see no reason to look for an excuse not to do this or to do it. I'm ready to support it here and now based on it being included in the original staff report.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong?
I'll agree with the deferral because I'd hate to put in a sidewalk and then a year and a half later tear it out. And for the sake of staff being able to come back to us with that information, I think that's very key information because what a waste of taxpayers' dollars if we know in a year and a half it's going to get torn out and we didn't want to take the time to find that out. Thank you.
Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Worship. I'm not going to vote in favor of the deferral either. And going back to your original question about that you asked earlier is, since it's already in our plan for 2025, it's a priority or else it wouldn't be in the plan. This staff report, which I greatly appreciate, is we've got extra money. There's some of the other things we can do. So I think what we're doing here is just giving more priority to something that's already been given priority by having work put in the plan. If in 2022, or prior to that, or even prior to the fall, when probably the tender would go out, that staff comes back to us and said, oh, by the way, you know, if we do this and we delay it a little bit, we'll be able to do all this, that we can then look at it then. But if failing that, I would just support it. Thank you.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will support the deferral. There is no urgency on this matter, and I don't know why we would not be willing to wait and get complete updated information from staff regarding the ramifications of the timing of this project. To me, that's the responsible thing to do, so I'll certainly be in favor of referral. Thank you.
Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Your Worship. I understand that there may be some considerations that weren't potentially fully understood when the recommendation of the potential projects were placed on that list. My preference would be that we identify this as a project that we'd like to go ahead with, and staff are going to have to do the necessary homework to get into the details anyhow, and should there be any information that we did not know about prior, that would be important for us to know. I fully would expect that staff would bring that to us if there was something that was unforeseen. So my preference would be not to defer the decision, just to simply go ahead with it. And yeah, if there's something that does come up in the regular routine process of putting a project more in depth together, that staff would come to us and give us a heads up. So I can't support the deferral. Thank you.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm also not going to support the deferral, and I have a question for staff. Can you, sorry, I should have thought of this before. I'm thinking of Councillor Armstrong's objection and the idea that we would put a sidewalk down and then discover that the underground, works weren't appropriate, and we would dig up the sidewalk. Is that a process that you could ever see the city, or a situation that you could ever see the city getting into, that we would lay a sidewalk without doing due diligence and without doing due diligence?
I'd love to say that on my watch, but I don't want to. I don't want to get too cocky with that. But no, it's not something that we would do without full knowledge of of the underground infrastructure. It's something that simply wouldn't happen. It's just here this evening, and I apologize if I've created more of a concern than solved. It's just that I don't necessarily have the full confidence that the entirety of the sidewalk scope was considered. It may be that everything's fine, and I expect that the due diligence was done. It's just that I'm sitting here tonight not having that full confidence in my own knowledge, and that's it. Not a reflection on Ms. Thomas at all, but it's just that I'm just not clear in my own head.
Thank you. And a follow-up, if I may. If this is passed tonight, that we're going to accelerate this to 2022, and staff start to do the design and the investigation, and it appears that the cost will run over because the infrastructure underneath isn't there to support the sidewalk, would staff bring that to us for a further decision point?
I think it would depend. We would start to develop the scope of the project, and I think it would depend on what point we get to the design. If it's late in the budget year, then yes. If it's early in the budget year, then we would roll it into the budget and perhaps highlight it for you.
And one final question, if I may. Why did Lost Lake not make it onto the list?
I'm sorry?
Lost Lake Road and sidewalk, can you tell me why that wasn't on the list?
Similar to Hammond Bay Road, these are two, residential neighborhoods that were, grew out of a hillside goat trail at one point. And so over many years, prior to amalgamation, even in both cases, we have very steep driveways on either side and a very constrained right-of-way. The costs are well beyond what we could afford or the city could afford in a general statement. That's not true everywhere, but in general speaking, it's the bang for buck theory. I think the sidewalks that are on the list are higher priority from a value point of view, if that makes sense.
Councillor Martman.
Thank you. I'm not going to vote for the deferral either because, like some of the other councillors have expressed, I believe that as long as we state that this is a priority, if that was our choice, then that states that what we wanted to see in 2025, we're looking at for 2022. If new information comes about, staff will come back to us. So I would like us to at least stay that this is a priority and this is something we would like to see done in 2022 and see what happens. Thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Yes, thanks, Your Worship. I don't want to carry on this conversation, but I just need to highlight, like, this was authored by Ms. Thomas, our Assistant Manager of Transportation. I have full confidence that if she put it on this list, a certain level of due diligence was done to get a cost in. And if something emerged or there was a piece of information missed, that staff, Ms. Thomas, would not hesitate to bring that back to council and say, hey, we thought it was a $550,000 project, but due to some unforeseen circumstance or due to a missing piece of information, it's increased, and so we're bringing it back to revisit it. So I have full confidence in this report, full confidence in staff's capacity to acknowledge when, as they do, we've all been here on the table when things, the scope grows. So I'm not going to vote in favor of the deferral. And if we proceed on the vote tonight, vote in favor of the project.
I'm going to come back to George Cuff again, first heard deferred. I have heard no compelling reason from any members of council tonight as to why a motion that wasn't in front of us about a half hour ago has to be decided tonight when we're talking about over $500,000 of the city's money to go into a sidewalk, which will have incredible popular appeal for folks living nearby and in the south end, and I understand that completely, and logically will complete a pedestrian walkway from downtown all the way to the end of Halliburton Street. But when I hear staff who have been complimented by both sides of this debate tonight suggest that they may wish to consider this again before we vote on it, I am much moved by that. With respect to Councillor Bonner's position and Councillor Brown, I think to some extent saying, look, you know, this, we trust staff, this was in the plan, it's on the list, etc. To me, I don't see what's in front of us tonight around item 4, which is the extension of Halliburton sidewalk. I don't see it as any more of a fixed plan than I do the concept that in 3 or 4 years I may need a new car and I'm going to start thinking about the car and the model and what I'm going to do with it, or any other reasonably significant expenditure for which you've got to save or plan or consider. If there were some rush tonight and the good people of Halliburton were, you know, burning torches outside with pitchforks, I might be more compelled. But I'm not hearing that, and whether it's a gap-toothed smile or a full smile, to follow in Councillor Gesselbrock's suggestion, I just think waiting for a few weeks to hear from our staff, for them to be able to give me the comfortable seal of approval before I'm going to commit $500,000 of the citizens' money to a project that is just one of 4 recommendations from staff. I'm going to vote for deferral. Nothing will be lost by it. The world will not end. I suspect the public will appreciate the consideration that we give to that, as opposed to, as I say, deciding on a motion that's now a little over a half hour old to spend $500,000 as opposed to the others. I'm sure if the good people of either Needham Street or Allenadale to Prince John Way and Departure Bay Road, or 6th Street, Wakeside to Howard, had an opportunity to know that we were going to shift the balance, so to speak, and bring what I think most people assumed was the fourth priority up ahead of them, they might have had something to say as well. But they're not going to get that opportunity when we foreclose them tonight, and I frankly think it's no excuse to turn around and say, well, if this presents some problems, staff are going to come back and tell us later. Why make a decision of this nature tonight when it can be easily deferred for a few weeks to have staff to report? That will be the last I'm going to say, I suspect, but we'll give the last word to the mover, Councillor Hemmons, and then I think we should get on with the vote.
Thank you, quickly. The 4 projects that are listed as potentially coming through in Phase 2, Departure Bay South, 6th Street North, will any of those require further investigation before we fund them, if we choose to fund them? Or is this problem centered upon Haliburton?
Your Worship, I believe the other ones, 6th Street and Departure Bay, for instance, have been scoped. I believe there's no infrastructure underneath either of those locations.
Thank you.
The motion is for deferral. All those in favor? Councillors Armstrong, Mayor Crowe, Councillor Thorpe, Councillor Turley. All those opposed? Councillors Martman, Gesselbrock, Hemmons, Brown, and Bonner. The motion is defeated. We are now back to the main motion. Is there any need for further discussion? No. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Thank you, Worship. I've got full confidence that the proper due diligence will be gone through to make sure that this project can go ahead in a way that's good and mindful of the expense that to be had. And I appreciate the fruitful conversation on this. I think we're getting a little worried that we're going to get out of here too quick, and I'm glad that there was a good debate. So thank you very much for the work by staff, and yeah, thanks.
And I would say to the good people of Haliburton Street and the South End who look forward to this project's completion, I would happily be voting for it if we had deferred this and allowed staff to come back to us with appropriate further comment, which would have given me the comfort level that I think is appropriate for an expenditure of this size and nature. So I will not be voting for the main motion for that reason. Councillor Brown.
Yes, sorry, Your Worship. I just feel I have to add that commentary sort of implies that we're not being responsible with tax dollars here, and I don't think that's the case. It was included in this report with a price point on it. Ms. Thomas clearly felt confident when she drafted this report to bring it forward. I feel that has to be acknowledged because it's not the trust here I have isn't in Councillor Hemmons' motion. It is in this report here that contains this item. And so for me, I feel that this is a responsible vote to make based on the, moving forward, but based on the work of Ms. Thomas and the division or the department that put this together. So that's what gives me confidence in this particular vote.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just can't help adding that I disagree with Councillor Brown respectfully. I don't think this is the responsible thing to do, and I don't think the decisions that we're making on this topic right now reflect good governance, so I won't support it.
Councillor Armstrong.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Thorpe. When we have the head of the department saying he doesn't have confidence in because of some new information, Mr. Sims, sorry, I believe we need to listen to that. So it takes a lot of courage for him to come forward and say that perhaps he missed something or he's got a concern. And by us not listening to him, I'm with Councillor Thorpe. That is not good governance.
Councillor Martman.
I wish to concur with Councillor Brown. I believe that every one of us at this table take our fiduciary responsibilities very serious. We don't take $500,000 and just look at it as play money. We look at it, how can we responsibly spend the taxpayer dollars to improve our city? Haliburton Street is in an area of our city. We've got the north end, which is getting complete streets from Metro Street. We do have improvements going on all over this city. Haliburton and the south end has been a portion of our city that has actually been neglected for many, many years. It is also where we have, not all people, but some of the people that live in the south end actually don't use cars. They can't afford cars. They're walking, they're biking. These are children that are on Haliburton Street. We haven't asked to push anybody from the second phase for the other streets that are recommended. We haven't asked to stop those. We haven't asked to stop anything for this year. We're simply saying what was budgeted for 2025 will be looked at in 2022. If any new information, and our staff is terrific, our staff will come. I have complete confidence in Mr. Sims. I don't believe we'll put down any sidewalk and dig it back up a year and a half later. So I really strongly think that this is money that we will have in 2022's budget and that we won't be taking away from anybody else this year. Thank you.
Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Worship. Contrary to what some of my council members are saying, we're not taking this project off the table. I fully believe that it's scheduled for 2025, not necessarily for any of the reasons that have been presented so far. It's because of staff capacity, would be my guess. They've already said, we're not voting to take it off the list. We're just voting to leave it the way staff are recommending it happen in a timely fashion. And so for that reason, I cannot support moving it ahead unless we hear from staff that, yes, they got all kinds of capacity and they can deal with it. Thank you.
Or we're going to let Councillor Gesselbrock have one more go at a smile.
There's a part of me that just wants to jump in, but no, let's just vote on it.
Thank goodness. All those in favor? Councillors Martman, Gesselbrock, Hemmons, Brown, and Bonner, and those opposed, Councillors Armstrong, Mayor Krogh, Councillor Thorpe, Councillor Turley. Motion carries. A spirited debate. Bylaws, Councillor Gesselbrock.
Move that zoning amendment bylaw 2020 number 4500.177 to rezone 30 Lorne Place from duplex residential to low-density residential be adopted.
Seconded, Councillor Armstrong. All those in favor? Any opposed? None. Motion carries. Notices of motion, Councillor Gesselbrock. The motion has been referred to, but...
I'd like to, submit a notice of motion for a resolution titled Immediate Protection of All At-Risk Old-Growth Forests in BC. And it's been submitted to staff, the resolution, and accompanying briefing note for council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the last item is other business, which is the correspondence from Wendy Clifford, which I've asked to be put on. She has written on behalf of the Nanaimo Airport to the Premier, asking the province to consider several immediate relief measures because of the disaster that has been faced by the airport, including providing immediate financial support, advocate for federal financial support, investing in air transportation infrastructure, and at the right time implementing measures to stimulate domestic and international air travel. And she has respectfully requested the government service during these difficult times, requested government support, etc. And we have been asked if we would offer a letter of support. So I'm in council's hands, whether we would write a letter supporting the request from Ms. Clifford as board chair of the Nanaimo Airport Authority Commission.
Move that you write a letter of support.
Councillor Armstrong, seconded. Councillor Turley. Discussion? All those in favor? Any contrary? None. Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Back in camera.
Sorry?
We have to go back in camera.
Yes. A motion we can't adjourn this until we finish the in-camera.
So you're looking for a recess of the open meeting?
We'll recess the public meeting.
Yes.
And go in camera to finish off the in-camera item.